I read an article recently about in a science journal about how important prayer was to the experience of recovery, and so they know they're learning what the church has always known. At any rate, I think that it's important for us to know, but this does not dismiss science in any way. It simply says that, as we say in the Baptist church, we know a doctor who's never lost a patient, and we rest on that, even though we recognize that the will of God will sometimes supersede our will. And many times it will. We pray for healing, but we also say, "Thy will, not mine, be done." And it's hard to get to that place. It's very difficult to get to the place where you can be fine with God's will if it doesn't match yours. But recognizing that death is still the end for all of us. The real joy for us, and I know these pastors, Pastor Kitchen and Pastor Wise, have preached a lot of good sermons home, a lot of good Christians home. That is, that our hope is not in this world, and we have to recognize that even when we lose a loved one, the joy is that loved one, that won't be the last time that we see that person. So in terms of healing though itself, I think that we can learn certainly a lot from the scientific community if we would learn to behave ourselves and do the right things and be good patients. But also it takes, I've heard a number of times that particularly someone in stage 4 cancer, for example, when they can't explain how that's been reversed, that very often it's a positive attitude and a deep and abiding faith that has turned it around. It's the only thing that they can identify as being possible to turning that situation around. I don't know if that's what you were asking.
No, that's good. No, I just wanted to introduce, and I want us to have an open dialogue. And I'm gonna give my faith credentials. I'm actually I was raised African American, African Methodist Episcopal AME Church, but became Baptist, and then now an ordained Baptist minister. And, I mean, not Baptist minister.
Yes,
Baptist.
that's right.
You got that. I didn't go to Dominican school yet. I am an ordained Baptist deacon. It's different. Deacon. I'm an ordained Baptist deacon at Alpha Street Baptist Church. Sending you greetings there by way of Pastor Howard John Wesley. And I have this perspective. I was raised in a very religious family and went to church every Sunday, went to Sunday school, and have experienced 2 denominations that are historically African American, i.e. the in this country at least, AME, and then Baptist, and have really marveled as I've gone in my career to become a scientist at how much of an outlier I became the further I went. Meaning that most of my colleagues in science don't believe in anything. Most of the ones that I've interacted with in science, they're either atheist or agnostic, and would look at me like I had 3 heads because I believed in Jesus.
Right.
And I think it was very interesting and a teachable moment that President Obama often talks about is some of the exchanges I have with my colleagues about why I believed, because I just do. Faith is the essence of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That's what the Bible says. So I just believe. I believe in the Lord, and that's my faith. But it doesn't preclude my ability to appreciate science. And in fact, if anything, my view of science as a PhD, I'm a philosopher, so I'm going to get philosophical on you, is literally our ability to observe and have a conversation with nature, which God made. So as we learn more about things like genomics and genetics, we get better at observing our nature, us, it's really having an even deeper conversation and connection with God. So that's how it goes for me. And one of the things I'd like to talk about, again, we're talking about diversity. We're talking about some hard issues. Diversity. We're talking about getting everyone to participate. I'm going to throw this out there and keep it real. One of the things that our pastor often says is that Sunday morning can be the most segregated day in America. Meaning that depending on what type of church you go to, and by that I mean even denomination, but even the majority of the memberships, you could find yourself, like in our context, in our church, I would say we're 98% African American. Maybe down the street you have another Baptist church that may be 98% Caucasian. And what does that mean? I kind of want to delve into that a little bit and talk about your perspectives, how they're different, and even coming from different denominations. You guys are coming from different denominations. How do you feel that some of the differences that you may have in denominations reflect maybe cultural differences, and then also the way in which science is viewed in those denominations? To you, Nick.
Yeah, I was talking to Ting about this a little bit during the break. If you walk into my church on a Sunday morning and look around, you'll see pretty significant degree of ethnic diversity. But on the other hand, most of the people at my church, so we're located in Central Square, directly between Harvard and MIT. Most of the people at our church are connected to Harvard or MIT in some way or another. They're pursuing a degree, they have a degree, they're married to someone who's in one of those situations. The Presbyterian tradition is a relatively intellectual tradition. We like our doctrine, we like our confessions and our creeds. So the types of people, whether I'm the one preaching or whether it's the senior pastor, the preaching is relatively intellectual. And so we've noticed, and we recognize this as not the best thing, that it's very easy to come into our church and feel very welcome and comfortable immediately if you're connected to this academic community. But otherwise, it's pretty hard. You don't quite feel like you belong. And it's in all these, there's nothing overt about that, but it's just in all these different subtle ways. So that's something that we're trying to work on. I mean, one of the profitable things that we've been able to do. I mean, thankfully, there is a long tradition. My church is relatively young. We started in 1996. But there are churches that have been around for 100, 200 years in Cambridge, most of which are African American. And so we've had a great partnership with the Pentecostal church down the road from us, where we've had pulpit swaps. And that's always very interesting because, so you get the bishop preaching, and he'll start singing in the middle of his sermon, and everybody's like, what's he doing? And then meanwhile, our pastor is going down there to deliver a sermon and try not to put them to sleep. But that's been a great partnership and a good exchange. But yeah, I would say so. For us, it's diversity. We're starting to talk about the intersection between race and class, race and socioeconomic, race and education. So we face challenges, I would say, with regard to diversity on all of those dimensions.